Hello, everyone, and welcome into episode 127 of the Stomp the Bus Show. I'm your host, Mark Harris, and going to touch on a few things today, starting out with baseball and the somewhat recent news of Willie Bloomquist not being let go following ASU's loss in the UCLA Regional. I've got some opinions on the college football playoff new structure that's being bandied about, or the potential new structures. Last episode, I was kind of weighing both options. I've definitely come to a stronger viewpoint on one, and a few just random football tidbits that occurred in the last time I recorded, which was a while ago. I think it was May 28th, I believe. So a little over a week ago. Anyway, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe on YouTube, rate and review on your podcast platform of choice. And as always, remember to follow the College Huddle. They do a lot of great work, plenty of great fan-run podcasts and YouTube shows on the Great College Huddle Network. All right, before I fix my hair here, which I should have done before the show, but alas, I'm doing it now. Let's start with baseball. So ASU baseball loses 2 games in the UCLA regional. They lose to UCLA on Saturday, and then they lost to UC Irvine on Sunday. Before I get into the Willie stuff, I want to just talk about these games first. And let me share my screen. Okay. So I am not really that upset with how ASU baseball performed in the UCLA regional. Obviously, the last 2 games were tough. You give up 22 total runs. I mean, that's not ideal at all. The reason I'm not that upset is because getting game 1 was actually big. And it was big. One, it was just nice to have a night where you go in with some hope, being like, oh, hey, maybe we could beat UCLA, maybe we could. And of course, had they beaten UCLA, there's a good chance they'd be hosting University of Texas San Antonio in what would have been the Tempe Super Regional. Of course, that's how it works out when ASU doesn't win, but, pretty clear that UCLA was just a better team than ASU, so it's kind of hard to be too upset about it in the micro view. That game 1 win was impressive. You get off to an early lead. You get some big outs in the 8th inning, a big 8th inning double play to secure a lead. Isaiah Jackson, great game, 2 RBI, home run. Good pitching performance from Ben Jacobs. And winning that first game on May 30th, it at least allowed you to hold serve in the UCLA regional, because with Tracy Smith, like in those years, it felt like they would always lose the first game, and it would be to a worse team because ASU oftentimes would be a higher seed or a 2 seed or something, but didn't happen this time. As the 3 seed, remember, you barely make it in. You know what? Like, you played well in that game, and then reality struck in the next 2 games because this pitching staff wasn't good enough, and that's what ultimately did you in. Again, giving up 22 runs over the span of 2 games, like you're going to lose. So, all in all, it sucks to lose. Like it's not, obviously, it would be better if ASU won and was playing in the Super Regional right now, obviously. But I feel like this is what I've been saying all season with the baseball team. Like, this is the expected result. There was never at any point this season with the baseball team where you looked and like, oh, this team could make a run. It's like, no, like this team is good enough to make the NCAA tournament. They were good enough to be a competent team in the NCAA tournament, right? Like, we saw teams have horrible performances in the regional rounds, high-ranked teams. ASU wasn't necessarily in that bucket, but one of the reasons they weren't in that bucket is because they had very little expectations. So, not a horrible tournament, but also you went in with such low expectations. That's part of the reason why you're not that upset, right? So kind of a ho-hum weekend. I'm not here to like totally rain down on some of these pitchers that didn't do well. Like this is what this team was this year. So going out kind of with your head held high, not completely embarrassing yourself, right? Like I was okay with that. It wasn't pretty overall, but getting that win on Friday was a good little moment, and it salvaged kind of some embarrassment, because I mean, you entered that having lost 4 games in a row, right? And of course, Oklahoma State turns out to be a little bit better than you think, but it wasn't good. It wasn't pretty. So, you know, okay, regional appearance. You didn't totally like embarrass yourself. It's kind of the equivalent of like in men's March Madness. ASU was like a 13 seed, 12 seed, and they kind of hang with the 5 seed, the 4 seed for a lot of the game. They maybe take a short lead, they keep it within like 5 to 6 points, and then ultimately it's just not enough for them to get the victory. So, not a super memorable game or whatever, but okay in the micro view, right? But then after the game, we get to the macro view, and this is June 3rd. So Tuesday, right? Tuesday was June 3rd. Tuesday this past week. I always forget what day it is. Yes. On Tuesday of June 3rd, Chris Cartman of Sun Devil Source shares on Twitter that Bloomquist is coming back for one more season. It was their first regional appearance under his tenure in 4 years. And he has just under $400K left on his contract. I am fine with Bloomquist coming back, but there's a key secondary piece to this. Cartman goes on to tweet, "It is unclear whether Bloomquist will get a contract extension, but ASU is considering additional staffing, use of analytics, scheduling strategy adjustments, technology and facility improvements, and more to accelerate the program, in addition to 11.7 to 34 scholarships increase." So all the secondary stuff is good, and we already knew, like the 34 scholarship addition is a big deal. Giving out full scholarships, like that kind of works as NIL, right? Because like the old argument against NIL when football players is, oh, well, they get a scholarship, and so it's no big deal. And taking a lot of things out of context. With baseball, you couldn't really make that argument because they didn't get full scholarships. So they got partial scholarships. Now 34 full scholarships. That's big. And that's going to attract some kids that may have otherwise not come to ASU. But all the other stuff, the facilities improvement, analytics, staffing, scheduling tweaks, all this stuff, like that's fine, but that's just on the margins. The biggest thing here is the first little thing. It's unclear whether Bloomquist will get a contract extension. Bloomquist does not deserve a contract extension. Do not, Graham Rossini, athletic department, if you're listening, do not give. What has he shown that it's like, oh, this guy is going to lead ASU back to being a blue blood program, a program that can go to Omaha on a fairly regular basis. You don't see that with him. I'm sorry. And it's been 4 years. It hasn't been, this isn't year 2, this isn't this is year 4, and we're just getting back to the tournament. Okay. Now, granted, they probably should have made it in year 2, but that's whatever. I'm not going to get into that again. And if you do if you do give him a contract, it's got to be like a 1-year addition. Okay, we'll see. But look, you're already comfortable having Bobby Hurley be on a lame duck deal, right? Why can't Willie Bloomquist be in that same scenario? I don't understand. It hasn't been good enough to just trust him that it's gonna get turned around. Like, I think that I think it's pretty important that he not be guaranteed. I think you just see how it goes. Like if they enter the tournament as like a 2 seed next year, then yeah, sure, give him a contract extension. That would be a level of improvement, especially considering he would have more resources to work with, right? He would have the 34 scholarships and the whatever, some additional NIL funding and whatever, all these other improvements in the margins, right? That's great, but he can't be. I'm planting my flag that contract extension would be a bad idea. And I just mentioned Hurley, like for like as bad as the last season and the year before have been. I'm completely blanked the 23-24 season from my memory. I don't even of basketball. I don't even remember. That was last year of the Pac-12. Whatever. It wasn't good, right? But in 22-23, ASU basketball did make the NCAA tournament. So in the same time that Willie has been at ASU baseball, he's made one tournament, barely, last 4 in. Bobby Hurley has done the exact same thing. Now, obviously, the difference is like Hurley was there for longer, and it's not apples to apples, but over the last 4 years, from whatever 2021 to 25, like they've both made the NCAA tournament one time, barely made it, and look, they both won one game, right? Hurley beat the Nevada team in Dayton, and then lost to TCU. Bloomquist and the Devils beat UC Irvine, and then lose the next 2 games. So it's pretty similar. And guess what? Hurley is lucky to be here at this point, honestly. Like it is a testament to ASU basketball not being a good program that he is still at ASU, right? And I've talked about the, just subpar roster that he has entering this season, and it feels like it's coming to an end. He mentioned in this past week that his back was up against the wall, so like he knows the deal, and maybe like Bloomquist shouldn't be facing that type of dire reality, but it doesn't matter. Like there's still no reason to commit to him long term. There's just not. And I don't know if a coach is like the thing that like changes the outcome for ASU baseball, but it's not. I mean, it could lead to a few wins on the margins, and a few wins on the margins could be the difference between a 2 seed and a 3 seed, and that's the difference between, a weaker regional versus a stronger regional. All of a sudden, it changes how your season plays out in the long run. So all of this is to say, just I'm fine with bringing back Willie for one more year. Ultimately, he did get the team back to the tournament, and I think what we've seen, like ASU isn't just going to fire a coach after they make it to the NCAA tournament, after they make the postseason, right? Graham Rossini getting rid of Natasha Adair was a pretty easy decision because the women's basketball team just had an extremely bad record, and there wasn't any improvement. And so it's like, okay, like you got to do what you got to do. And ultimately it looks like Molly Miller is a good addition, and on we go. But that's why, like, I'm sure there were baseball fans, and there were at times this regular season, like I think I tweeted from the Stomp the Bus account, like, I'm kind of okay if we don't make the tournament. This team doesn't deserve to be like a lock to make the tournament. And if you didn't make the tournament, then at least it would be easier to move on from Willie. Now, the fact that he's coming back after a, an okay regional performance, maybe he would have been brought back anyway. And that would have been a disaster. I think now you can at least sell, like just looking through the comments, you kind of have people going either way. I love Willie, did a great job. We just don't have the pitching. Not surprising. Shame. Good for Willie. Hope it's good for the program. I'm fine with it. Good. Uh, yeah, this is a good gift. Like, makes sense. Like, not a great, better option. It seems like it's kind of people like, yeah, probably should do it, but not. It is not a strong stamp of approval. Like, I remember one time I got hired for a job, and I wasn't. I was hired because the other guy turned them down. You know, and luckily, like, I didn't last long at that job. Thank the Lord. Like, that was a few years ago, and it's in the past and whatever. But like, uh, it just sometimes it's just one of those deals, and so that's kind of where it seems like ASU is at with Bloomquist. So hopefully he improves even better, right? He's still, I don't want to say he's still learning to be a coach. It was his fourth year, and that's kind of a cop out, but he's still learning to, it's still new. And in his defense, he will have more resources next year than he did for this past season. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. So far, haven't been, scouring the internet for this stuff, but it doesn't seem like there's a bunch of players that have transferred yet, and that could change, obviously. But it seems like the program is in decent shape. I don't know how their MLB draft fortunes look like. I bet Isaiah Jackson will get taken high. I don't know how that equates to like a Brandon Compton or Cromwell or whomever, all these other contributors on the roster, but I expect to have a good hitting team again next year, and we'll see how it goes. But just to wrap this part of the conversation up, like you can't, I have to stamp on it, and like you can't just sign him to a 3-year deal. That would be a bad idea. So see how it goes next year and revisit it at the end of next season. All right, this is where I am going to probably tick off a decent amount of people listening. So last year, not last year, last week, I'll just use this article. I kind of went through the two different 16-team playoff options bandied about. And there's the 5+11 model, which is 5 conference champions are guaranteed in SEC, Big 10, Big 12, ACC, and the highest ranking group of 5 team. And then 11 automatic qualifiers. That's the one that Brett Yormark wants, or at least has publicly said. I believe the ACC is on that side too. SEC now wants it. The Big 10 does not want that one. And they might consider going to that one if the SEC decides to play 9 conference games. And so that's one. And that one has a lot of different – that one seems like the fairest on paper. I think last week, I don't remember, but that seemed like the one I kind of was the most in favor of. And then there's the controversial model, which is the 4 – yeah. Which is the 4 + 4 + 2 + 2 + 1 + 3 model. And that model, the thing that upsets people about it is the Big 10 and SEC are would be both guaranteed 4 auto bids. Big 12 and ACC only get 2 auto bids. Group of 5 just gets 1, and then there's 3 at-larges. So, you know what? I don't need an article for this. I'll just speak. While I was mostly in favor of the 5+11 model last week, I have reversed course. I have seen enough new viewpoints. Joel Klatt had a good topic on it on his weekly show. I saw Mark Schipper, Fifth Down College Football, on the 365 Sports Network earlier this week. There was a guy, Wild Ute, on Twitter who made this point, and I'll share this as I speak. This is from Wild Ute on June 2nd. I'll have that up shortly, but I think the Big 12 just needs to reverse course, and I think it needs to take the 4+4+2+2 model because you got to get the guarantees. I'm sorry. You have to get the guarantees. You are running a real risk of getting just one team in per year with the 5+11 model, and there are downsides. Neither of these are good options, right? But I think if you have two not great options, you take the option that gives you guarantees. And if you can guarantee to get two teams in the playoff, that is enormous. That gives you so much wiggle room as a conference because then, one, you don't have to worry about getting screwed by the committee. And this was the point that Joel Klatt was making is like, that's fine. Like you can boast your chest out and talk about earning it on the field and all this and fairness and all this stuff that sounds good. And I kind of agree with, but it's an unfair field already, right? This would include trusting the committee, which good luck considering they had a 10-2 BYU team who beat SMU on the road last year, ranked 17 in last year's poll. So BYU would not have made it last year. Okay? That's important to recognize. And there's a lot of years where the second Big 12 team wouldn't be in the top 16 in the past. And maybe there are years in the future where it would be, but it's putting a lot of trust in the committee. It is. And I just think you got to take the guarantees. You got to bite the bullet. I saw John Wilner of the San Jose Mercury News. His point was the Big 12 can't take the 4+4+2+2 model because it codifies inferiority. It legally binds. It is a legal document that states like you are half as good as the Big 12 and as the SEC and Big 10. And from the Big 12 conference office standpoint, it makes sense why they don't want to do that, right? It makes sense because in TV deals, it could hurt them down the road. It is literally writing it down on paper. You are half as good as the Big 10 and the SEC, which sucks. Like that is a crappy reality to have to deal with. But I don't care about the Big 12 central office, right? I've said on this show as an ASU fan or heck of any fan in the Big 12 or ACC, your individual athletic department, your individual school needs to be gearing up, making plans, getting everything set in motion to hopefully put yourself in the best position possible to join the Big 10 or the SEC or the Super League in 5 years, whenever all the conference realignment shuffling begins again, because it's going to happen again. Everyone knows it. You have to get your ducks in a row. And if you're an individual school in the Big 12, like ASU, having that extra guaranteed option of being in the playoff is so important because it's from a perception wise, you just get into the dance as being, you're a playoff team. If that could mean that could be the difference in ASU making the playoff, one time in the next 5 years or potentially 3 times in the next 5 years, because what if like there might be years that are pretty similar to this past year in the Big 12 where you have a 10-2 team that wins the conference and then another 10-2 and then a few other 10-2 teams, and then a 9-3 team. And in the 5+11 model, those 10-2 teams that didn't win the conference, there's a good chance they don't get in the playoff. And then you're effed. Then you're going to the Pop-Tarts Bowl or the Alamo Bowl, which is fine for a given season, but you would much rather go to the playoff because it's just a better spotlight. Think of the difference. Like if ASU had, in whatever world, like ASU had the exact same regular season, wins the Big 12, but just doesn't go to the playoff because they don't have enough. They went 10-2 and they weren't good enough. Like it would have been cool to win the, Alamo Bowl or whatever, but not as cool. I'd rather be in the college football playoff and have the game we did against Texas, right? Like that was a better outcome for the football program, even though ASU lost that game. Like So I just think it's pride, and I don't think it's actually looking out for your schools to give them a model that is way more risky for them and has a higher likelihood of you getting fewer teams in. Because I guess maybe part of this, and I think I've seen like ASU fans and Arizona fans and Utah fans kind of being more open to the 4+2+2 model, because maybe it's just because we don't have this like attachment to the Big 12 the way a Kansas State fan does, or a West Virginia fan, or a Texas Tech fan, or whomever, who is like, no, like this is my league, like this is the league that I care about. We don't quite have that same attachment. We're kind of here, like, here is I always make the lifeboat analogy, right? Like the Big 12, when the Pac-12 disintegrated and sank, like Oregon and Washington, they got the best lifeboats. They go to the Big Ten. Obviously, UCLA and USC, they get even better lifeboats because they're getting the full share. But those four schools get the best lifeboats. They upgrade. ASU, Utah, Colorado, and Arizona, they survived. They got a lifeboat, but it's not an actual boat. It's like a raft. They get life rafts. So they're still surviving, but you got a life raft. You didn't get a lifeboat. You got a life raft. Cal and Stanford, they got a life raft, but with like the worst version of the life raft, and they need to go even further to safety, right? In this analogy, being in the ACC, and then Oregon State, Washington State just drowned, or are, I was about to say hyperventilating. That's not the word. Wow, I can't remember what it's called, but treading water. They're treading water right now at best. But anyway, my point is, like, the four corner schools who left, yes, they joined the Big 12, but other than Colorado, like, they weren't running to get into the Big 12, like especially ASU and Utah. Like, they're like, okay, like this is our best option. We got to make the best of this to put ourselves in decent position for whatever the next deal is in 5 years, 5, 6 years, And so that's maybe why, this is some psychology on my part, but like that may be why there's just less of a holding on, gripping connection to the Big 12, because it's like, as a fan, like I don't really care if the Big 12 suffers reputationally, because I don't have this attachment to the Big 12. And for the people saying like, oh, it codifies you, at like what John Wilner was saying is like, oh, it codifies you as inferior. Well, it's like, yes, it is worse to like have it written down on paper that you're half as good, but you're already getting half of the paycheck in the TV rights, right? You're already getting a half share, or half of the share of like the Big Ten and the SEC. And you're already perceptually viewed as less than the Big 12 and the ACC. So why would you not grab the safety of getting a second team in? And in the 4+4+2+2 model, there's also the +1 for the group of 5 team, and there's +3 for at-larges. So you still give yourself the option, albeit a small option, if we're being honest, of getting another at-large team in the 16-team playoff. So there's obviously 100% chance you would get 2 teams in, and there's like an even more, like, whatever, like a 15% chance that you get, on any given year, you get a third team in, and maybe over that span, instead of getting you get 11 teams in 5 years, as opposed to doing the 5+1, you may get 7 teams in. You may only have 2 years where you get that at large and get a second team in. So I just think if you're a Big 12 school, the better outcome for you is the 4+4+2+2 model, because it guarantees your individual, or it makes it more likely that your individual Big 12 school, if you go 9-3 and you finish second in the Big 12, you can make the college football playoff. And maybe even though you don't deserve it, right? Potentially, like if ASU, whatever, 3 years from now, let's say they lose to Kansas State in the Big 12 championship game, ASU enters that game at 9-3. but for whatever reason, with how the seeding shook out and tiebreakers, and maybe you get whatever, all sorts of things, ASU is deemed to be the second best team in the Big 12 after a 9-3 regular season, and they make the playoff. And who knows, maybe things click and you win a game, and all of a sudden the season looks a lot better than the alternative. If you go 9-3 in the 5+11 model, you're just not. There's just zero chance you're making the playoff as the Big 12 team. There's not, because the committee is going to favor the Big 10 and the SEC because they're going to recruit better. And all of these metrics, right? Like some of the FPI metric came out. Bill Conley's S&P Plus metric came out, both on ESPN. The F&P metric, the FPI is kind of a joke, honestly. But all of these metrics, they incorporate recruiting into it big time. And so unless ASU's having a pretty good recruiting class, they're in roughly the top 15 of all the services. They might drop down a bit. Who knows where they're finished? But like all the teams ahead of them, for the most part, are Big 10 and SEC teams, and they're just going to have the year-over-year recruiting. And while the recruiting, like, it doesn't mean everything, it means a lot, right? Like it means a lot, and it's a worthy thing to have in these predictive metrics, which the playoff committee uses to help seed teams. So I just think it's such an uphill battle for the Big 12 to do the 5+11 model. And the only reason you're doing it is out of pride and out of not codifying inferiority. And which I understand kind of why Brett Yormark and Big 12 conference office leadership would be okay with that. But if I'm at a school, I know that Mark Harlan of Utah advocated, he showed his support for the 5+11 model, it went out on the field. There's so many ways to get screwed if you're a Big 12 program in the 5+11 model. There just is. And so and look, you could be someone who watched my show last week and be like, oh, Mark, you seem to like the 5+11 model. You like the idea of having it be one on the field and all this. And you know what? Like, you might be right. I guess I've just taken in more stuff over the past week, and I've just kind of thought about it more, and I've changed my mind. And I think that, like, I just think the negative potential is worse than the positive upside, And so this is what Wild Ute posted on Twitter earlier this week. I'm going to present my screen. Okay. So I'll share my quote tweet of this after. So I'm just going to read his post. Hearing Big 12 ACC arguments against the 4+4+2+2 CFB model in support of 5-11. Bet on yourself, game theory, perception issues. Seems like many have jettisoned the worst case scenario. You regularly get one team in the CFB and continually lose first round games. The 5-11 model could bring a terrible CFB narrative that leads to a quicker P2 breakaway. The deck is stacked against the Big 12/ACC already. What evidence is there that suggests the Big 12 would get more teams, more than one school in the CFB? I want 2 guaranteed bids annually. Take it. I agreed. I will show you my quote tweet. I'm not going to go through the replies to that. Okay, some people don't like it. Mine is good arguments here for the 4+4+2+2 format. The negative risk potential of getting just one team in is real, and locking in 2 bids could bail out the Big 12 in many years. Relying on relying on the committee to put in 2 or more Big 12 teams is also a big risk. 4+4+2+2 may be the best option. And I think I want to highlight the point that I made earlier this week. Locking in 2 bids could bail out the Big 12 in many years. Again, I think as the optimistic Big 12 fans like the idea of, like, oh, well, maybe there will be a year where the Big 12 has 2 11-1 teams that play in the conference title game, and then both will get in, and then maybe a 10-2 team gets in. Yeah, that could happen. That could happen. But there's also the reality that the league gets won by a 9-3 team, because remember, like, ASU it was awesome to have all these guys come back, but like we don't know how that's going to be in future off seasons with the portal. We don't. So it's awesome to have like ASU return everyone this past year, and that's why it's such a big year for ASU football coming up, because you want to take advantage of this connected and talented roster and a good quarterback, right? But that's only for this upcoming year. We don't know what this is going to be like 3 years from now, And so there's a reality where a good ASU team loses like two of its really good players in the portal, and a team that would have gone 10-2 goes 9-3, but maybe they still finish second in the Big 12, and under a 5-11 model, you just wouldn't get in. There's no reality where a 9-3 team gets in. Under the 4+4 plus 2+2 model, if you're second in the Big 12, you get in. You get in no matter what. You get in if you go 8-4, right? And it's just a weird tiebreaker scenario. So that just has to be like there's a reality where the 4+4 plus 2+2 model, like it leads to some Big 12 and ACC teams getting in that would have never gotten in otherwise. That's the thing that people aren't talking about, right? Some of the Big 12 homers are like, oh, like, we got to earn it on the field and all this. It's like, but it's already an uneven field, and it's already a landscape in college football where, for the most part, the teams in the top two leagues have the most power and influence, and therefore the most options to get better players and poach from the Big 12 and ACC. So it's all this is to say, like, just to kind of put a bow on it, like, take the 4-4-2-2 model, Brett Yormark, or maybe don't take, I don't know, however the powers that be, I guess we should be rooting for the Big Ten to win. And it sucks. Like, I get it. It sucks that, like, you don't want to be in a league. You don't want your league to be viewed as so obviously inferior. But I'll say this, like, if there were some sort of guaranteed, well, actually, I don't know about that with the Pac-12. I'm not going to say that because I don't know if that's true. So, but I guess this kind of connects to my point of, like, you need to be looking out for yourself as a school. And if you have a guarantee in your league, if you have two guarantees in your league, that there is no guarantee that you're getting two teams in with the 5+11 model. There's not. And we just had a 10-2 Big 12 team, two 10-2 Big 12 teams, right? Iowa State and BYU, who both were not in the top 16 of last year. They were behind 3 9-3 SEC teams. 3 of them. They're behind Alabama, South Carolina. Oh, who was the other 9-3 SEC team? It wasn't LSU. Somebody else. I don't remember. But now it's going to eat at me that I don't remember. Alabama, LSU. I can't remember who it was. It wasn't Oklahoma. It wasn't. Oh, and Ole Miss. All 3 of those 9-3 SEC teams were ahead of a 10-2 BYU. They were ahead of, yes, a 10-3 Iowa State, but an Iowa State that was 10-2 at the end of the regular season. That should be a blaring red light. It should be the canary in the coal mine of, hey, like, you're not going to get the benefit of the doubt. You're not. And so, sure, like, if a Big 12 team goes 12-0, they're going to make the 5+11 model. An 11-1 Big 12 team is going to make the 5+11 model. But that 11-1 team may get seated behind a 10-2 SEC team. And then it faces a tougher road to win a game and all this stuff. So it's, I think you just gotta go with the guaranteed bids. And looks like Mark Shipper agrees with my analysis, which basically I quote tweeted. He went on the 365 Sport, which is a great YouTube channel. Tons of great Big 12 content on there. And my point is, I agree with fifth down college football. Take the 2 guaranteed spots and leave it out of the hands of a committee. It's good that the Big 12 has lots of teams that can beat one another, but it can also lead to just one team getting in and 4 teams ranked 18 through 25th at the end of the year. I hope someone in the Big 12 office, like Mark Shipper, has for 4,540 followers. But I just hope this conversation, this kind of talking point, gets back to the Big 12 office and they rethink it. I really do. Because the 5+11, you are just really leaving it in the hands of a committee, and a committee that, right, like they may be compromised by ESPN, and ESPN has the SEC broadcasting. They may be compromised by the other TV networks that show the Big Ten. Like, those schools have the power and the money in this scenario. So you just got to suck it up and take the 2 guaranteed bids. And you got to put your ego and your pride at the door. I think that's the model. So not everyone's going to agree with me on this. A lot of fans are like, oh, it's the perception, Big 12 and Big 10 and SEC. The only reason they're ahead of everyone is perception. And then the NFL draft comes and the Big 10 and SEC completely dominate the NFL draft, and the Big 12 has 31 players taken. Again, that can change on a year-to-year basis. Like, for example, ASU only having Cam Scatterbo get drafted, like that wasn't a representation of how good ASU actually was, because ASU is having so many people come back. And there's a good chance ASU has like 6 players drafted this upcoming year. But at the year after that, who knows? Like, it'll probably drop back down a bit, because you're going to lose ideally Levitt and Tyson in the first few rounds, Maxi Inácio, or a few guys on defense, or running back, whomever. And then it'll get back down to having fewer guys picked. And meanwhile, Florida went 6-6, 7-5 last year, had 7 guys drafted. So like, we can complain about it's only perception. And it's like, okay, well, the Big Ten just won the last 2 national championships, and that followed a run of the SEC winning like basically every national championship. So I think if you're just living in what the actual reality is now, you have to, as the Big 12, take the 4+4+2+2+1+3 model and hope for the best. And if the Big 12 is really strong one year, then there's a good chance you get a team in as at large in the +3 option. So that's my piece on it. Hopefully this can get some traction, and people can share their reasons why I'm wrong, why they disagree with me, or why they support my opinion. So, okay. Now to just some random football stuff. I'm going to start with some news that came out actually just after. Dillingham went on the Herd last week. Really good interview with him and Colin Cowherd. I give Cowherd credit. He talked about Kanye Udo replacing Scatterbo. So he knows his stuff on ASU football a decent amount. But it was just a good interview and some good national attention for Dillingham. Anyway, right after I recorded on the 28th of last week, 29th, it was announced 4 of ASU's game times were announced, and really 5. You know what? I'm going to pull up the ESPN schedule for this, but 5 game times announced when you include the Territorial Cup at the end of the year, or at least the date of that was announced being the Friday after Thanksgiving. Let me pull up ESPN. Come on. Nope, not the Arizona Diamondbacks. There we go. Okay. Share this tab instead. So this is a better way to share the actual schedule. Times and dates. So I mentioned that, I guess we already knew it was going to be on Friday the 28th for Arizona. It's going to be on Fox, likely in the afternoon. I'm fine with that. I kind of like having it be the Friday after Thanksgiving. That's just me, but whatever. So we know times and TV networks for 4 of ASU's first 5 games. So the first game is going to be hosting Northern Arizona, 7 p.m. Pacific time. That game will be on ESPN Plus. if you're an ASU fan in the Valley, like just go to that game. Don't and if you don't have ESPN Plus, like just go to that game. That'll be the best way for you to see that game. Support the guys in their first home game after winning the Big 12. I'm going to be out of town that weekend anyway, so I won't. I won't be at that game, and I'll be at a bachelor party, so I probably won't be paying too close attention to it. I frankly don't want to be paying too close attention to this game because if I am, that means it's way too close for comfort, and that's very bad. So ideally, ASU just lays the wood on NAU, which I expect them to do, and that's that. Then next week on the 6th, ASU is at Mississippi State at Starkville. Game kicks off at 4:30 p.m. Pacific time, and it will be shown on ESPN2. Two things with this. One, being on ESPN2, that's a decent window for them. You know, there will be other big, like there's going to be the game on ESPN, there will be the game on ABC, and there will be the game on Fox. But if you're on ESPN2, that's still going to draw in a good bit of viewers, and so get yourself a good bit of attention. So I like being on ESPN2 instead of being on like ESPN Plus potentially or ESPNU or whatever side ESPN thing. I'll take being on ESPN2 for this one. It's not ideal, but it's Mississippi State. That's not a big program. So there you go. And then, but what's more important is 4:30 p.m. Pacific time. That's 6:30 p.m. Central time in Mississippi. I've never been to Mississippi in my life, but I imagine in early September, it's hot and it's humid. And I know that ASU already practices in the heat, but the humidity is a different deal paired with the heat already. So I would much rather play this game at night with a 6:30 p.m. kickoff and most of the game being played, you know, after the sun sets, then have it be a 1:30 p.m. local time kickoff and you're playing in the dead of the afternoon heat. That would be much worse for ASU, even though you're still coming from a warmer climate. I think that playing at 4:30 p.m. actually is it is a good thing for ASU football as opposed to playing earlier in the day. So both of those things are good. Then when you have the rematch against Texas State, another Saturday game, the 13th, that is another late game, 7:30 p.m. Pacific time. Games to be on TNT. Kind of cool. So don't really have too many thoughts on that. That seems pretty. It's still going to be a hot day, early in the year game. You expect it to kick off late. So you host Texas State on TNT. So another national broadcast for a game that Texas State ASU. But being on TNT for that game is better than like I said, ESPNU or CBS Sports Network or ESPN News or or ESPN Plus, whatever it may be. Being on TNT is better than that. And then at Baylor, still TBD. Hopefully, it's not an early game. 5th game of the year, you're at home on Friday the 26th, and you host TCU. Should be a pretty good team. They return Josh Hoover, quarterback. 6 p.m. kickoff on Fox. So you'll get a primetime viewing experience for that Friday night kickoff. There'll be a ton of students there. This is where anytime I talk about game scheduling, I call the people who want early noon games, I call them hypocrites because I think for the most part they are lying. And I've been to noon games where there haven't been as many people there as there are night games. So that's the end of my rant. It's also, you don't have to deal with the school night. 6 p.m. Fox, game should be over by 9. Should be a packed house. Even if ASU, doesn't get off to as hot of a start as we think, this should be a big game. So the other games we all know, but I also look at the only other. I'm just hoping that the Iowa State and Baylor games are not too early because that definitely played a role in ASU losing to Cincinnati last year. And if Brett Yormark is smart, he will not screw over ASU with a 9 a.m. local time kickoff. So that is my thoughts on the schedule. And then back to some recent comments. It seems like On3 really loves Arizona State. That's for sure. Let me scroll up here. Oh, I guess I didn't quote tweet the. Obviously, I'm sure many of you saw Kenny Dillingham talk about being the next Clemson, next Oregon. So I already did a show on that earlier this year, which I'm going to link that episode in the show description on YouTube, so you guys can check that out. I basically went through all these different categories of uh, Arizona State, Oregon, and Clemson, and comparing them to one another. And in all, like Arizona State came out behind those two, and it's a long road to hoe for ASU to actually get to the level of Oregon and Clemson. However, I like that Dillingham is setting high goals. I think these types of things can actually be helpful in recruiting. You're selling a vision, right? And, it's the saying, shoot for the stars, land on the moon, or whatever it is. Like, maybe you don't get to that level, right? Maybe you don't. But maybe in the attempt of getting to that high level, you become equivalent to like Utah in the latter half of the 2010s with Kyle Whittingham, and you're just like 9 games a year you're winning. 8-4 is considered a down year. You win the conference like 3 times in 6 years and make it to the championship game another time. You're just consistently putting guys in the NFL. You establish yourself as just a good program. You like what Kansas State is. If you become like Kansas State, that is a win. Good Lord. If you become, I could throw out like a Louisville recently. I think Louisville over the past decade, maybe a little bit over a decade, like that's a program you kind of want to emulate. Very rarely are they horrible. They did have a few kind of bottom falling out seasons at the end of the Petrino era, but you get my point. Like they won the Sugar Bowl with Bridgewater. They won 9 or 10 games with Lamar Jackson. And then with Braum recently, like they won 10 games a year ago with, I think it was like Jack Plummer, a quarterback, like someone who wasn't even that good, but they still won 10 games. And so Louisville would be the worst of those 3 examples that I named. But my point is, like, in Dillingham, like he's shooting for the stars. It's clear. Like if you're comparing yourself to Clemson and Oregon, like you are setting high expectations. But like Dillingham, like one of the reasons he made those expectations is because it was like, I want to be here. I want to help ASU get to those expectations. So this is just a thing I've talked about. It's like, it's great that Dillingham is a ASU fan like we are, like I am. And he wants the very best for the program, and he doesn't want to leave for anywhere else. Or at least he says that. You never know how it's actually going to play out, right? Like college football coaches are liars. And Dillingham, like, ultimately, like, we have to see him stay for all this time until it's actually believable, right? But everything that he's said so far makes you think that he's really wants to be at ASU and really wants to elevate the program. And so in the pursuit of trying to become the next blue blood, as he put it, maybe you become the next Utah. And you know what? That's pretty good too. So it's kind of, if he's aiming for perfection and you end up just being pretty good, and it's like, okay, well, it's better than where ASU was before, right? So, yeah. So that's kind of my take on the Kenny Dillingham, blue blood, Oregon Clemson conversation. I spoke about it in detail earlier this year, and I'm going to share that show in the show notes. But then another thing that came out, this is on Thursday. This is from Pete Nakos. So he spoke with Pete Nakos of On3. I'll read the quote out. Arizona State QB Sam Leavitt to Pete Nakos, quote, I have a national championship and the 2025 Heisman as my goals, but I don't look at things from a big perspective all the time, just day-to-day getting better. Another quote, maybe I'll pull up the article, but I think it's a locked article. Both Dillingham and Levitt were upfront about staying at Arizona State. Levitt turned down the portal to run it back. Quote, it was a quick conversation, and then it was squashed. I'm in such a great position here. Got all my best friends, best team to play on. So it's 3 plays that stick with. Oh, okay. So cool. 3 plays keep looping in the mind. Okay, this is unexpected. I'm going to share this tab now. This is from On Three's Pete Nakos. Please read the article. I retweeted it on the Stomp the Bus page. 3 plays keep looping in the mind of Sam Levitt this offseason. Without even a pause to collect his thoughts, the ASU quarterback quickly rattles off 3 moments from the Texas loss that are still gnawing at him. There's one on the goal line where I got tripped up and didn't score. We ended up not scoring. I remember if I just pushed a little bit harder, I feel like I could have gotten in. Oh, so these are 3 plays that 3 negative plays. He then points to a crossing route on the final drive of the first half. He released the ball a bit quicker. It could have ended with a big gain. Instead, that drive ended with a missed field goal. Think about it a lot. That's the play, the motivation to get in the film room. When I'm in the film room, that's the way I approach it. Just like it's 1, 2, 3. He's there. I'm there. Just quickening up my mental reaction. 3rd play was the interception he threw in double overtime to end the game. And then it goes on to how like these detail-oriented thoughts are big things. So I'm not going to go through the entire article, but it does show that like Levitt is dude's a competitor. Everything we've seen about him, like he is a competitor, and the fact that he is still like thinking about these things kind of proves that like he is on a mission to get better, and that's fantastic for ASU football. So just wanted to share that stuff at the end of the show. All right. Thank you for listening and watching. Please like and subscribe on YouTube, rate and review on your podcast platform of choice. Follow the College Huddle. And as always, go Sun Devils, baby.